very much. And I'd like to stand on the protocol that has been observed. And just only greet Umama Marwala and say congratulations. And I would also like to greet Usingaya, Prof Marwala, Nosis Jabulile, and the children. It's wonderful to be with you, but it's also bittersweet. To all of you honored guests who are here, good evening and Happy New Year. It's still January. When I was considering my role of Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, Prof, your work, your leadership, and your scholarship was my greatest inspiration. After just meeting you for a few times, I was struck by the infectious enthusiasm, your warmth, and your generosity of spirit. Thank you for the introduction to the members of your senior team, and thank you for the time you took to make sure that I visited the institutions that are linked to the university. I still look forward to meet most of the senior people at UJ, as well as to know more about the work they do. So you can imagine how shocked I was when I learned that I was about to lose you. I could not have imagined that today I would be standing here bidding you farewell. I have no doubt that you will make us immensely proud. I have no doubt that you will turn the United Nations upside down, and that's a good thing to do. Trust me, I've been there. I was only consoled when I learned that we now have an incoming Vice-Chancellor who is already known by the community of this university. Our world, our country is going through difficult times. We are navigating through a difficult period in the history of humanity as the world. We are characterized by challenges of leadership, of unending crisis, of wars, of scientific changes, and we need people of your stature. Professor Mpedi, we will hold on to you in these times at the University of Johannesburg. Of course, we will all have to do our part in order to make sure that we make an excellent team. But luckily, Professor Marwala, you will not be completely lost to us here in South Africa, because you will serve an institution that you are all part of as member states of the United Nations. On my part, I enjoyed getting to hear about your vision and what excites you. And Xoliswak just highlighted some of the wonderful things you do and think about. I remember very well the visits to the schools and institutions that are linked to UJ that we visited together, and that was unforgettable. Just as I have been impressed by the story of UJ, which you have heard about, I was excited to be introduced and to be exposed to the hard work on digital transformation, gender equality, and the fight against socio-economic divisions, all of which confirmed that being associated with University of Johannesburg is a good thing to do. Today and forever, we will always appreciate your leadership and the contribution you have made to this institution. You have made sure that tomorrow will be better than today. And we also salute those who came before you, who laid the foundation that made it possible for you to spring the way you do. So thank you, Prof, for your stewardship. UJ's profile has risen significantly, and it has carefully built a huge reputation because of the work it does. Since your appointment as Vice-Chancellor, the university's strategic direction has been informed by the careful and considered crafting and articulation of the vision that take us far. You have ensured that the Pan-African vision of the university is coherently blended with the consideration of the fourth industrial revolution and sustainable development goals, without diluting the need for decolonization to permeate across teaching, learning, research, and community engagement. In the 6-year period that you have been a Vice-Chancellor, you have given careful attention to the overall university, and you have made sure that the performance of our students is not neglected. The indicators for students' throughput, success rates, graduation rates, enrollment, in line with the need for demographic equity, and the presentation in science, engineering, and technology, and the establishment of several research centers and institutes significantly improved the research output rates of the university, as we have heard. The outstanding rankings and the research metrics at UJ are representative of the success of your tenure as a university, and they provide a solid framework for the next cohort of leaders. You leave us on solid ground, and you have raised the bar. So for those of us who are left behind, and those of us who have just begun to serve at this university, it is with a heavy heart that we bid you farewell today. But I am grateful for the time that I've spent with you. You now go to the UN University, a relatively new institution, also only established in 1972, with programs and global systems of institutions that are based in 12 countries, in Belgium, Canada, China, Finland, Germany, Ghana, Iceland, Japan, Malaysia, Netherlands, Spain, and Venezuela. This is not good enough. The Global South is not happy with this kind of representation. And I suspect one of the reasons they want you is to fix this challenge. But not only that, to make sure that your leadership, your scholarship, your change-making skills are felt by the people in the Global South. And of course, your determination to bring light where it is most needed and largely denied. The SDGs are critical for the university, for the UN University. This university played a role in informing the SDGs. They played a role in helping the SDGs develop indicators for success, as well as to monitor the implementation of the SDGs. As you probably all know, we need help as far as the vision that has been painted by the SDGs. We are falling behind and we are under-delivering on the SDG as the world. And this has been worsened by COVID. So, Prof, there is going to be a lot to ask from you by member states, by civil society, and by many stakeholders of the United Nations. We have 7 years to the end of period of SDGs. And in these 7 years, we have a lot to do. Countries will have to prioritize the SDGs according to their needs, but all countries still have to pay attention to all SDGs. We hope under your leadership, you can help to bring about a sense of agency to all other countries, but also to us in South Africa, so that as your country, we don't let you down, and as your university, we also don't let you down. 9 out of 12 centers of the UN universities are in the global north. Only 1 center of the UN university is in Africa, which is in Ghana. We don't have one in Southern Africa. Hint, hint. Yonke indawo inedolo. Southern Africa, East Africa needs this university to make an impact. We do not have this university in critical parts of Asia. We do not have the presence of this university in Asia Pacific as well. So I hope that Japan, as the founding member of the UN University, will work with you and make sure that you are able to make this university more equitably accessible to your family and especially to your children. I hope they will enjoy this journey. I hope they will make new friends, but also they will be challenged in a way that they've never been challenged. As the 19th century American poet Henry Watson Longfellow once wrote, "Great is the art of beginning, but greater is the art of ending." This is certainly a remarkable ending. Go well, Prof, and thank you for everything you have been to us and you'll always be to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. Next, we'd like to read out a message from our former UJ Chancellor, Professor Njabulo Ndebele, who was unable to attend this occasion. The message reads as follows. It is with a heavy heart that my wife, Mpo, and I will not be able to attend your farewell function, much as we so wished to. You have done so much for UJ during the period of your intellectually rich and path-breaking leadership at UJ. Through your leadership, you made sure that UJ consolidated and deepened its roots as South Africa's leading university in the post-1994 period of our country's history. UJ has, in its academic open-mindedness, displayed purposeful steadfastness, bold creativity, and a robust sense of adventure, all of which you took to new heights. Your brilliance as a thinker, breaker, academic, and intellectual leader all have left an indelible mark. These you are certain to carry with you into your new and vast span of responsibility on the global terrain through the United Nations University in Tokyo. South Africa is indeed immensely proud of you. That's the message from Professor Jabulo Ndebele. Okay, next on stage, I'd like to call Dr. Blade Nzimande, the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation. We saw him take out a pen and making notes when our chairperson was delivering a speech. So we hope that inspired you to dig deep in their pockets and do something for UJ. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Let me take this opportunity to start by greeting our guest of honor. I think I must get my protocols right. The Vice-Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg and your dear wife, Professor Tshilidzi Marwala and Dr. Jabulile Manana, family and friends, and our dear mother, who is with us here. Let me greet our former president, Kgadima Motlanthe, Kulu, and Mrs. Gugu Motlanthe, our former deputy president and UJ Chancellor, Mam Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. Let me also greet the Director General and Secretary of Cabinet, Mrs. Pindile Baleni and Mr. Franz Baleni, the Chairperson of Council, Ms. Xoliso Kakana, the Vice-Chancellor and Principal Designate, and your dear wife, Professor Letloko Mpeti, former Chair of Council, Mike and Sandy Teke, former Vice-Chancellor and Principal, Professor Aaron Rensbeck and Dr. Sizeka Rensbeck, Vice-Chancellors of other institutions and all distinguished guests, and all the invited participants tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We are here tonight to bid farewell to Professor Marwala, a leading scientist, scholar, communicator, advocate for the role of science and society, and son of South Africa, as he embarks on the next journey of his illustrious career. A lot has already been said about who Professor Marwala is. I'm glad to be here as the minister to acknowledge your role in our higher education and innovation system, to honor your achievements and to wish you well in your new leadership role in the United Nations system. As an ambassador for our country and Under Secretary General of the UN, and as the Vice-Chancellor of the United Nations University. Of course, our former Deputy President, who just spoke before me, has done it very well in beginning to define part of your mandate. I can only endorse it as is. We are so proud of you for this magnificent achievement and look forward to the role that you'll continue to play in global knowledge development. You know, when I get asked a question, is this a loss? I find it very difficult to answer that question. Yes, it may be a loss to UJ, but also is a gain for South Africa, for the continent, by being now placed in this role that you are playing. Gives us an opportunity as South Africa, I think, I've been thinking about this, perhaps to begin to define what the role of the South African higher education system should be in relation to the United Nations University. I think that's an opportunity for all of us to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, as a country, we should be proud to have a black accomplished scholar, an academic administrator, and a dedicated researcher who continues to fly the South African flag high in the nations of the world. And we are confident you won't lose touch with South Africa. You have distinguished yourself amongst your peers. And I must say that yourself and your predecessor, Professor Rensburg, we have done one of the most successful journeys of transformation. We take this lightly. From Rao to UJ, it's been indeed a very long journey. And you have done well in repositioning. This university. By the way, it's our most popular university. Most of the students, they want to go to UJ. They fight sometimes, they phone, get into my office. If I'm not taken at UJ, it means that I'm not continuing with my studies, and so on. That's part of reflecting of what UJ has done. One thing that I must say, without going into detail, because this has been said by Chair of Council very eloquently. One thing that I really marvel at Professor Marwala about is how do you work as a manager of an institution and still be able to write so much? Honestly. And by the way, what people also may not know, you can't write if you don't read. That's a fact. So to actually be able to be doing all these things, I wish many of our managers could actually follow this example, because the difficulty we normally have, once you are a vice-chancellor, you have to manage an institution. And we lose you as a scholar. We have lost many scholars who became vice-chancellors, and they don't continue to do that. It's not easy. The fact that you have managed to do that is something that personally I just find very inspiring. We have indeed written in many areas. As it has been said, I don't want to go into that. You are a very talented person in so many respects. I know that when I became a minister, one of the things that struck me was your role, I think, as the Dean of Engineering, and the number of students that you were producing and how that contributed to what we have now. By the way, UJ contributed a lot to this. Some people do not know that for the first time in 4 or 5 years ago, we've got majority of engineering students in our universities being black students. And that's a huge achievement. I was saying this earlier, that all your former black universities in South Africa, not a single one had a faculty or a school of engineering. Just to understand the significance of the contribution that we've made. I also see Professor Marwala as playing a very important role, which indeed you won't abandon by being the Vice-Chancellor of the United Nations University, to assist us in what we now characterized as the higher education, science, and innovation landscape, partly created by the combination of higher education and training and science and innovation. That you have been at the center of what I regard as the fundamental task and project in this sphere, that of transforming relations of knowledge production in our country, in the continent. And what do I mean by that? That our knowledge and its production and reproduction is still largely patriarchal, it's still largely racialized, and it still largely have an elite orientation to solve the problems of the rich and not the problems of ordinary people. Your work is contributing. That's how I define my mandate, by the way, very simply, as a minister, is to transform relations of knowledge production in this country. It's a huge task, is not a small task. The United Nations University is a large postgraduate institution with significant research and teaching activities in carrying out its mission. And it's defined as such, I quote, its mission to contribute through collaborative research and education to efforts to resolve the pressing global problems of human survival, development, and welfare that are the concern of the United Nations, its peoples, and member states, unquote. It's a huge mandate, this. Also to how does that university contribute in dealing with the key global crises that we are facing at the moment? One, climate change is a big one. The impact of COVID-19 and the manner in which it has exposed the inequalities within and between countries. The energy crisis is worse for us here, but we are not the only country that is facing that. Even developed countries, by the way, are themselves facing an energy crisis in their own way. The dangers of nuclear confrontation, by the way. I don't think we talk enough about this in the wake of the conflict in the Ukraine. And that there are countries now who are using science to try and explore something very dangerous, what they call the first and the last strike, using nuclear. There is work that is being done to look into that, because there are countries who believe they can strike with nuclear weapons and not get a response. Those are some of the big issues that we are facing. The economic crisis that the world is facing, but also most importantly, another issue that perhaps we don't talk about, I'll say it in the language that I understand best, the crisis of social reproduction. Battles by families and communities to make ends meet. And this crisis manifests itself in so many ways, and one of its most significant manifestations is gender-based violence. It goes very deep. So these are some of the global crises that we face, and part of the challenges that now you will have to assist in your role in thinking through them. One of the most important things about the United Nations University is that it fosters think tanking about problems facing humanity. But we have confidence that you will actually do this. Because also one thing that I like about Professor Marwala is that he is solution-oriented. That's a very important mindset. There are people who are very articulate in lamenting about all sorts of problems in the world. But they won't say one thing and say, then what is to be done? And I like your style that you listen, even when I'm provocative when I'm in the United States, when I say, Professor Marwala, my own belief is that actually the foundations of all modern science is historical and dialectical materialism. Say, Minister, actually you're right. You know, you may be right, actually, because what opened my mind as an engineer was the foundation course that I did on historical materialism at university in the United States, being very generous, of course, to someone like myself. And that is very, very important quality, that you don't think because of your achievements, you take yourself off the best thing that has ever happened to South Africa, which is a very elitist attitude. But we are a very down-to-earth South African son of the soil. This morning, it's actually a coincidence. I was at UJ this morning. We were together. We were launching this new technology, former President Motlanthe, of 3D printing of houses. You know, when my staff said I must go to UJ to open this, I said, I'm being misled here. How can you print a house? How can you print a house? Are you talking about perhaps a plan for the house that then is being printed in a particular way? I was there today. Indeed, I saw a house being printed using 3D. And to the chair of council, the incoming, that's Professor Marwala. It's a project of the Department of Science and Innovation, but we said to UJ, let's partner with you, of course, together with the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Human Settlements. And of course, one of the challenges this poses is that you can have these walls being constructed, printed, in 8 hours. That's all. Then you have, what you have to do after that is to do the windows, the roof, and other things. So we can massify provision of housing in our country. Of course, that poses another problem. Construction industry is the most labor intensive, and that's what we need most, given our high levels of unemployment. How do we balance the two? Those are some of the critical questions that are facing us in relation to technology and science. Now, I would just like to say, as we rely more and more on knowledge development, developing our own solutions to global, national, and continental problems, the importance of linking the worlds of science and policy becomes even more critical. That's why also you have been making your own contribution on this score. As you have also said yourself, I quote, education in its entirety means understanding science and technology as well as human and social sciences, unquote. There aren't many engineers who are preoccupied about artificial intelligence who think about social sciences and humanities. We did well as South Africa, not least because of some of your contribution in handling COVID-19, Manzimand, because we managed to weld together the biomedical sciences, amongst others, with the social sciences and humanities. In that way, also, we are a very exceptional scholar of natural sciences, because scholars of natural sciences, they only think the only thing that's science is natural sciences. You know? Sometimes I provocatively remind people like Professor Nongqa that, by the way, don't forget that mathematics is a branch of philosophy. It's not the other way around. It's not the other way around. I have no doubt, therefore, in closing, that in your role within the UN system, you will continue as an academic leader and scholar and writer. We will see you developing more linkages with Africa and South Africa, it has been said, in terms of what needs to be done, and continue to play this role. We are proud of you. I have accepted now that you are going to the United Nations University. I no longer have a dilemma that, well, it's a loss for you, Jay. Go and represent us, and I have confidence in you that you will indeed be able to make us proud as South Africa. We wish you all the best. You have our support. Thank you very much.
Sayvuma baphoxeke laba nomona ivume ivume sayvuma baphoxeke laba nomona sayvuma ingoma sayvuma madoda sayvuma baphoxeke laba nomona sayvuma ingoma sayvuma madoda sayvuma baphoxeke laba nomona eyake hayibo eyake hayibo hayibo bayasifundisa eyake hayibo 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 bayasifundisa sayvuma ingoma sayvuma madoda sayvuma baphoxeke laba nomona sayvuma ingoma sayvuma madoda sayvuma baphoxeke laba nomona eyake hayibo hayibo bayasifundisa eyake hayibo hayibo bayasifundisa sayvuma ingoma sayvuma madoda sayvuma baphoxeke laba nomona.
Do you have, thank you very much. For the next item, Prof Marwala, this is your farewell. We invite you to come dance with the choir. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Nolita Vuguza, who is going to introduce Prof Tshilidzi Marwala. Over to you, Doc. Thank you.
Minister, can I borrow from your salutations and say, as per Minister's greetings, good evening. Molweni, for all intents and purposes, Professor Tshilidzi Marwala has already been introduced. Madam MC, as I was listening to all these tributes, my mind raced back to 2001, when, as a young scientist entering the business world for the first time, Professor Marwala interrupted a crucial meeting at SAB. He was introduced as someone special, hence the interruption, as somebody who had a PhD in artificial intelligence, something nobody knew nothing about. We could only sigh, smile, nod our heads, and wave. Fast forward. Today, I introduce him as the outgoing Vice-Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg and as the incoming Rector of the University of the United Nations. In doing so, I draw inspiration from an early 19th century English lullaby written by Jane Taylor, simply entitled The Star. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. I think that sums up
everything about Professor Marwala, a diamond in the sky. Having heard all these wonderful things about Professor Marwala, some of you must wonder, what in the day of Professor Marwala is it? Professor Marwala is a man of suits, formal, deliberate about them. He casually wears a jean, sneakers, and an African top here and there. He is a pescatarian. He eats fish. He eats lots of fruit and vegetables. He drinks lots of tea from China, from Japan. No wonder he ended up in Japan. Of course, he likes skipping, as the deputy chair said, and he walks on campus every day. Professor Marwala laughs easily. He is accessible, and he loves his family. He reveres his late grandmother, Vochianello, who taught him engineering through the clay pots she made down in the river of Tutwini in Venda. Her grandson today is a professor of those thermodynamic processes, having studied in Ohio, University of Pretoria, Cambridge, to being one of the most famous intellectuals in his field. And as he will tell me, thermodynamics, Nolita, is a study of relations between heat, work, temperature, and energy. And at that time, I don't even understand. He adores his late father, who passed on last year, who himself was a mathematician that produced many luminaries. We're grateful to them for having bequeathed to us such a person as Professor Tshilidzi Marwala. He is his mother's son. And as he will be calling her about a domestic issue in Venda, instead of her responding to the query or to whatever he will be saying, he will say, do you have flu? You are coughing. Mothers for you. Professor Marwala is a family man. You saw his lovely wife, Dr. Jabulile Manana, who has already been acknowledged. He also has got 3 children. Professor Marwala reads a lot, as in a lot. And he writes a lot. He is a polymath. His range is wide. Science, economics, and I think the minister said that, philosophy, language, the Bible. The list goes on. He has been quoting the Bible lately, even though he is quick to tell that he's not a man of any particular faith, but he reads and he knows it. As a Xhosa speaker, I just speak my language without knowing, And just when I think I've cracked a joke in Xhosa, Prof Marwala is quick to say, Nolita, how many clicks are there in Xhosa? And I'm like, can't just I laugh? Without knowing what constitutes the laugh. Of course, I wouldn't know. And they will follow a lecture about the number of clicks in Xhosa, the vendor he is. That's the range. Every occasion is a learning one with Professor Marwala. Once we were stuck in traffic in the freeway, and we were running late for the former chair of council's meeting, Mr. Mike Teke. In frustration, Prof Marwala says, hey, we should have used game theory here. Of course, silence from my part. And then the familiar question, Nolita, do you know game theory? How, Njani? Only Monday, last Monday, myself and my colleagues were having dinner in a bush, Nogal. And there, Professor Marwala, in a bush at the Boma, Professor Marwala speaking about Einstein theory in the bush. I do not know what happened, and then he quickly told us, and this is the theory of relativity, of course. He says all this thing. And in the mix, he says, his theory is E equals to MC square. I mean, at the back, there's a lion lurking somewhere. And that's Professor Marwala for you. Professor Marwala, you have turned us into some quasi-scientists, some of us who are not scientists. I always wait for people to talk about load shedding and ESCOM, and I throw in a sentence that leaves people looking funny at me, and they say, what is wrong with ESCOM? And I say, sounding exactly like you, ESCOM needs supercritical skills. And that's what I hear him say. I cannot develop the point, but I say it. As a scholar, Professor Marwala has produced 24 books, has published over 300 papers, has produced to finish 31 PhDs, and has supervised 47 masters. He is a recipient of the Order of Mapungubwe, which is an honor bestowed by the country for citizens who have excelled in their fields. He's a recipient of honorary doctorates from the University of Caucasus in Georgia, as well as his hometown, the University of Venda. As a boss, Professor Marwala is accessible. You can go to his office anytime and talk to him about anything, always rational about everything. You go to his office and to solicit sympathy, and you say, Prof, I'm not feeling well today. And then he asks, is it life-threatening? Always wanting to establish fact before the emotion. That's Prof Marwala. There are, however, things that Prof Marwala cannot quite do nor like. He certainly is not Mambinja. Not quite big on singing and dancing. You are not likely to see him on Idols anytime soon. Prof Marwala does not like to convey bad news to anybody. On one occasion, he received a strange request that he was not keen on approving. And so he forwarded the email to me, and with a note, Dr. Vuguza will be in touch with you. Of course, my colleagues, Professor Bega, Noloazi, Dr. Ralipata, Professor Swart, Dries, everybody, they are familiar with this instruction. So I said, yes, VC, I will be in touch, but what is it all about? To which he said, ask him what it is all about. And I immediately knew that the answer was no. And I knew that I had to convey this bad news. The following day, the VC calls, and he says, hey, how did yesterday go with that person? Then I tell him, VC, it was an untenable request. To which he says, that's good. You handled it very well. Professor Marwala, you've always stood taller than the rest. You've always exerted yourself more than the rest. You ran faster. You embraced first. You cared better. You represented ably. Ladies and gentlemen, the man of the moment, Professor Marwala.
Thank you. Ndiaribuwa. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nolita, for that introduction. Nolita did not say the complete story. When I barged into the meeting where she was with Dr. Vincent Mapai, I was actually going to brew beer for a living. Mutomboti. I was going to brew beer for a living. And then, of course, I brewed it very well for 2 years. And then there was a Damascus moment. It came in the name of Loiso Nonga, who called me and said, would you rather brew beer than brew people? I said, Loiso, what do you mean? And Loiso said, leave brewing beer and come and brew people. And of course, I joined that university, Bramfontein. Tokozani majuzi. So, Chancellor Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, Chair of Council, Ms. Xoli Kakana, our former President, Mr. Halima Mutlante, and Mrs. Gugu Mutlante, our Minister, Dr. Blade Nzimande, our former Chair, Mr. Michael Solomon Teke, and Mrs. Teke, our incoming Vice-Chancellor, Professor Litlokwa George Mpedi. Also, our former Vice-Chancellor, Professor Iron Rensbeck and Dr. Sizeka Rensbeck. I did my undergraduate in the United States in a place called Ohio. And when I came back, my only qualification was a master's degree. And as I was preparing to go and do a master's degree in Bramfontein, my mother called me and said, I received a letter from Professor Stephen Haynes from the University of Pretoria who wants to see you. And then I went and saw Professor Stephen Haynes. As they say, the rest is history. I did not study in Bramfontein. I studied in Pretoria. And Professor Nonga, as far as that episode of my life is concerned, I have never looked back. Vice-Chancellor of the largest university in South Africa, the University of South Africa, Professor Lenkabula, who is here also with us. Vice-Chancellor of the University of Venda. You see, when I first heard of a concept of a university, and I remember my mother explaining to me graduation, and she said, it's like they wear that thing that pura. That sometimes the pastors actually wear. For those of you who understand the modern African languages, you'll know what pura is, you know. So the first time I learned about the concept of a university, Dr. Ntambeni, it was the university. And Dr. Ntambeni is the Vice-Chancellor there. And Professor Tinyiko Maluleke. Professor Tinyiko Maluleke used to be at the University of Johannesburg. There is a modern proverb that says, all great careers start at the University of Johannesburg. And I am not lying. Dr. Tambeleni, it started at the University of Johannesburg when you were doing a PhD. And Professor Maluleke is the Vice-Chancellor of the University of the Tshwane University of Technology. Also, Professor Neromondo is here, the CEO of the National Research Foundation. You see, Professor Neromondo was my first PhD graduate. And in his group, there were very, very clever people. And two of them are here. There was now Dr. Busisiwe Vilakazi, who went and completed a PhD in artificial intelligence at Oxford. Ria, you are here. Dr. Ria Wetswa, Khoroya Dira. There was also Dr. Shakir Mohammed, the founder of Deep Learning in Indaba. And there was Dr. Lunga, who is in United States in a place called Tennessee. And Professor Neromondo comes to me and says, everybody is going overseas. You need to write the letter of recommendation that I can also go overseas. Then I looked at the now CEO of the NRF and I say, High Corner, I shall not write a letter of recommendation for you. He says, why? He says, I won't have a single PhD student if I write a letter of recommendation. I said, but let's make a deal. When you finish your PhD, I'm going to send you to Harvard to do a postdoc. And that is precisely what happened. And today he's the... So, ladies and gentlemen, in 2018, as I stepped onto the podium for my inaugural address as Vice-Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, with the characteristic red robes and orange pura-pura over my shoulders, I delivered a long list of promises. I think I had a bold vision. I knew, Minister, that by the time I leave this university, it shall be the #1 research university in the country. And it is on your desk, Minister, the research output that is going to do exactly that. The University of Johannesburg produces more research than any other university in South Africa today. As I recall, some of my opening words were, Kinako, isikhathi sifikile, chifinga choswika. Now it is the time for us as UJ, together with our key stakeholders in government, society, and industry, to mobilize the intellectual, financial, and social forces to invest and innovate through our research, teaching, and learning enterprises. The fourth industrial revolution is going to integrate man and machines, the physical and the cyber. We will equip our students to be dynamic and active participants as we influence and impact this new revolution, close quote. Tasked with preparing some words for my farewell this evening, I thought it would be appropriate to reflect on those promises and what has been achieved and what has not been achieved. I'll be upfront. There's only one thing that I did not achieve. And of course, Professor Litlokwa, you will have to go to the promised land. I have seen it, but I can't go there with you, you know. The thing that I did not achieve was to establish a medical school at the University of Johannesburg. But Minister Blade Nzimande, it shall be achieved. And from my Tokyo office, I will be cyber cheering the University of Johannesburg when it reaches the promised land. So my words 5 years ago have manifested in multitude of ways. So in 2018, there was much conjecture and speculation about the fourth industrial revolution and its impact. On the other side of a pandemic, it is apparent that this was not merely a sensationalized trend. Recent history has demonstrated that the fourth industrial revolution is here and is firmly entrenched across all sectors and across society. What a feat it is for UJ to have emerged as the fourth industrial revolution university against this backdrop. Long before my tenure as Vice-Chancellor of UJ, innovation had been ingrained in the DNA of this institution. This morning, I saw a university in the Cape launching a blue carpet. You saw it on the news. Well, at University of Johannesburg, even before I became a Vice-Chancellor, there was an orange carpet. And I think the blue carpet actually owes its origin at the University of Johannesburg. So this innovation is actually Professor Iron Rensberg's legacy. During his tenure, the institution became the national standard bearer for transformation, equity, access, Pan-Africanism, and global excellence. If I were to quote a UJ proverb, UJ is about accessible excellence. So Professor Rensberg's leadership laid strong foundations for UJ's trajectory. It is this very spirit of innovation that allowed UJ to emerge as a leader in the fourth industrial revolution sphere. When I embarked on this journey, I set out a vision of my interpretation of the direction of the university. One could call it an annotation of the strategic plan. R1. I know English is not your first language. And I know you are already confused. Let me repeat again. One could call it an annotation of the strategic plan. In the last 5 years, as the plans unfolded, I found that many of the projects and program of activities gained momentum and morphed into larger endeavors that have made this university worthy of our accolades. The last 2 years were during a pandemic unlike anything we have seen in our collective history, while adapting to unprecedented digital shifts have been a demonstration of UJ's tenacity and adaptability. So during the pandemic, we were the first university to complete the academic year. And I see the former president of the SRC here. He was an undergraduate student. Now the presidents of the SRC at UJ are postgraduate students, because we introduced a rule. If you have not passed all your courses, you have no business leading anyone, because if you are given the levers of power, you will deliver us to evil and lead us into temptations. And the president comes and talks to Mr. Mike Teke. Says, no, we should lower this requirement. I think the students must be allowed to pass only half of the courses. And as you know, Mike has formidable words that have also become UJ proverb. No. And as a result, ever since then, all our presidents are postgraduate students. So during the pandemic, after we completed the academic year on time, the students started complaining. They say, Vice-Chancellor, you rushed us. Who said we wanted to finish on time? I said, this is strange. Well, it turns out that they were eyeing the NSFAS payment, which couldn't be paid if they have completed their year, you know. So this was a vested but misguided complaint. So this is the University of Johannesburg. And there are many things that we have done. I'm going to talk about our internationalization strategy. At the University of Johannesburg, we have a project called Africa by Bus. This project takes our students, and it has taken 15,000 students by bus. And these are the countries that they have visited. They have been to Lesotho. Lots of cultural affinity with South Africa. They have been to Eswatini. They have been to Botswana. They have been to Namibia. They have been to Mozambique. They have been to Zimbabwe. You see, in Venda, when we call Zimbabwe, we call it Matongoni. I'm not gonna invoke Professor Mutambada, the spiritual connotation of that word. But they have been to Zimbabwe, to Zambia, to Kigali, to Kampala by bus. And we make them go by bus because we believe when you fly, using whatever airline you fly, you don't really see the country that you are supposed to see. In fact, when you're at the airport, it doesn't matter where you are. They even speak English. But when you are going by bus and you stop at a corner shop, you have to speak the language. And this is what it is all about. When we say we are the Pan-African University, we mean our students must be able to understand every aspect of the African continent. We also have a compulsory subject. We have a compulsory subject called Africa Insights module. It teaches African economy, African politics, and African history to all our students. Of course, because we are the University of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, there's also a compulsory course, Introduction to Artificial Intelligence, that all our students have to take. it is not a course, Benji Roseman, that will be able to make you understand what reinforcement learning is all about. You won't be able to write the chain reaction to find the derivatives of your error function. But you will be able to understand what this technology is all about, Professor Arthur Mtambara. You will be able to know what it can do, what it can be able to do, and you will be able to know what are its things that we need to avoid. About 20 years ago, my friend Arwani Ramaburano calls me. And this is why it is important to have courses like this. He says, "Hey, Tshilidzi, I have a proposal, an application for artificial intelligence." This was 20 years ago. I was like, "What is it?" He says, "We can write artificial intelligence that will be able to predict the lottery number." I say, no, my friend. Artificial intelligence is not about randomness. Yes, you can do random sampling, but it's not about randomness. So in the last 5 years, we have built institutions. We have built the Institute for Future Knowledge, the National Artificial Intelligence Institute, in partnership with the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies and Professor Maluleke and TUT. We have introduced degrees that never existed. A few years ago, I was invited to come and speak about artificial intelligence at the Oxford Union. I took quite a number of people who are here. I saw Chris Landsbeck, we went there. And then when you go and speak, you have to sign this thick book. And they will tell you that Malcolm X came and spoke 2 weeks before he was assassinated. They will tell you that Albert Einstein came and spoke. And they have pictures to show for it, you know. And then they boast about the list of prime ministers that who were members of the Oxford Union, who actually passed through that institution. And then I asked them a question. What did they study? And there are a few people who were in the other place here, Arthur Wusisiwe. And they said, no, most of them studied a degree called PPE, Politics, Philosophy, and Economics. It was right in the middle of Brexit. I said, there must be something wrong with this course. So I came back to Johannesburg, UJ, and we introduced a BA in Politics, Economics, and Technology. PET will produce better leaders than PPE. So, when it comes to issues of sustainable development goals, UJ is without equal. The Times Higher Education ranked us second in the African continent on impact rankings. I remember at one stage when we became number one for the impact of our research. So that was the time when our research output, when we overtook the University of, and I can name it because these are facts. We shouldn't be afraid of facts. We overtook University of Pretoria in terms of research output, University of the Witwatersrand, University of Stellenbosch, and University of KwaZulu-Natal. at the same time. And then one vice-chancellor then writes an op-ed on Mail and Guardian. He said, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. The following week, the impact ranking came out and we were number 1 in Africa. You see, I cannot explain the reaction of that vice-chancellor, but I will say it in Venda. Choba chiro mamandundu. I don't know how to say it. Choba chiro mamandundu is the silence that is so deep, that you can hear horses snoring in India while you are in South Africa. So indeed, if we look at the stats when it comes to the quality of the research that we do, for example, almost 60% of our research output are actually in the top 20 best journals in the world. And what does this mean? What does this mean? It means at UJ, quality is extremely important. Another thing that we introduced, the Africa Biographies Project, which we fund. We get people to write biographies of personalities. It is done at the Johannesburg Institute of Advanced Study, where President Kgalema Motlanthe is actually the chairman, and biographies have come out. The latest biography is the biography of Mzala. It came out of those biographies. Because if we do not write about ourselves, we shall be forgotten. And of course, the primary objective of this is to lift people who otherwise we would not think of writing their biographies. Because societies are not transformed by big personalities. Societies are transformed by the hard work of the ordinary person. If you want to see the future of a country, don't go and look at the character of the CEOs at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Go and look at the character of the teachers in our schools. Go and look at the characters of the leaders in our communities, in our village. If their character is good, then we can sleep very, very well, knowing very well that our future is very, very bright. Yes. Now, going back to the quality of our research, according to Scopus data, the field-weighted citation impact of UJ's research is 64% higher than that of global institutions with similar publication profiles. And of course, our publication profile is that of a leading university in Africa. And almost 26% of UJ's publications feature in the top 10% most cited globally, versus 15% for the rest of the sector. We really have invested in capacity. As we speak, UJ is the home of 600 postdoctoral fellows, higher than any other university in South Africa. And there are many campuses that we have bought. And I see here, I see the editor of Sunday Times and the former editor of Mr. Makanya, the former editor of This is sabotage. It must be, Professor Litlokwa, it must be from a competing institution. We have the Devland campus, where we are doing innovation. We have completed the Soweto Residence Complex. And today, Minister Blade Nzimande, you were housed, we had lunch at the Engineering and Science Center in Doornfontein, which, by the way, I did not know of its existence when I went there. You know? There's so much activities at the University of Johannesburg that even Vice-Chancellor does not know about it. And of course, our electricity consumption, 13% solar, were 0% just 5 years ago. And our chair has already indicated, I am leaving you. Okay, maybe let me be more accurate. Michael Solomon Teke and I are leaving you a very wealthy university. And please multiply that wealth. You know, there is an economic concept called the Matthews effect. It comes from the book of Matthew, where it says, to those who have, more shall be added unto them. To those who do not have, even what they have will be taken away from them. Minister Nzimande, that is the concept of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. I don't necessarily believe in that concept, but as far as UJ is concerned, may UJ become wealthier and wealthier. So, as I come to an end, and as me and my family ease to the land of the rising sun, as we go and work for the world. And just recently, I received the red United Nations passport. Our Chancellor knows what I'm talking about. I understand the enormity of the responsibility given the state at which the world is at. For the first time ever since 1945, Europe is the center of global conflict. And we do not know where that conflict is going to end. It is at times like this, where we need thinkers of great thoughts to take us away from this grave danger that we face ourselves. Albert Einstein was once asked, Professor Einstein, tell us which weapons are going to be used to fight the Third World War. And he replied, I don't know which weapons are going to be used to fight the Third World War, but I know which weapons are going to be used to fight the Fourth World War. It will be sticks and stones. This global conflict, if it is not arrested, can actually end civilization as we know it. Because the weapons are actually much, much more deadly. The incoming Vice-Chancellor and I have just penned an op-ed. Go and read it on Sunday on the Daily Maverick, where we are talking about autonomous weapons and human rights. You know, when the Isaac Asimov came with the 3 laws of robot, the robot, and the first law says the robot shall not harm a human being. I couldn't help thinking how beautiful it could have been if he had foretold the declaration, the UN Declaration of Human Rights. The robot must not harm human rights. Human rights is more than just physical harm. It's much deeper than that. And of course, with these autonomous weapons and these conflicts that we are seeing, we need thinkers to take us out of this mess. And of course, it involves knowledge. It involves research. Exactly, Professor Mpedi, what the University of Johannesburg is doing, and it must continue to do that. So as we ease and we start greeting with konnichiwa instead of ndawuyanduna, as we navigate this global, complicated global context, we have to bear in mind that we should never leave anybody behind. The Sustainable Development Goals are very, very important. Zero hunger. And the University of Johannesburg, and I can't claim the credit because it was introduced by Professor Rensberg, feeds students 3 meals a day who cannot be able to feed themselves. And this is what about it. This is what zero hunger is about. It's about. Of course, we used to feed much more people than we feed today. Now we say, no. If you are receiving a NSFAS allowance, you have no business to be in the queue. Because we heard rumors that people are getting into the queue because there is an iPhone that is in the market that they are eyeing. And this is all about, we have to feed people who cannot feed themselves. And it is wrong for anybody to take advantage of that. The issue of good education, which we are going to be dealing with as the Chancellor has talked about. You see, one thing special, Professor Mpedi, is that you can come at the University of Johannesburg in grade 0 and leave after you have done your postdoc. We have a primary school. We have a high school, undergrad, masters, PhD, postdocs. Funda Ujawula is a world-class primary school in Soweto, where no one without a master's degree cannot teach. Certainly no one without a postgraduate degree cannot teach. UJ Metropolitan High School is a fantastic institution. And this is because quality education, Chancellor, is a human right. And as the University of Johannesburg, we have to do everything within our powers to ensure that everybody is covered. The issue of gender equality, extremely important. Gender-based violence is still a scourge in our society and in our campuses, all campuses, and it has to be arrested. Mr. Michael Solomon Teke came up with the Men's League because we found out that this violence is being perpetrated by men, largely by men. And part of the reason is because there is no forum where rules are being laid down on how to behave as a gentleman. And the reason for that is because of the breakdown of families in our communities and is spilling into issues of gender-based violence. We need to arrest that. These are projects that I trust the chair and the chancellor, you are going to take forward so that this scourge is completely eliminated, not only from our society, but from globally. The issue of industrialization, the issue of economy. South Africa's economy has actually lost the touch. It has lost the touch because we are no longer competitive. It's not competitive because of what? And the SRC must know this. Because you are not reading enough. And one of the projects that I did was the Vice-Chancellor's Reading Club, where we want people to read. We want people to read so that they can be able to uplift our economy, to make it more competitive. So the task ahead is huge. And we are prepared to spare no effort to ensure that our society across the board, in all the continents, are actually elevated, and peace comes back to the world, and we focus on what really matters, which is the development of people. So I thank you very much. Ndiaribuwa. Bayadanki.
Thank you, Prof Tshilidzi Marwala, for that lovely speech. Next, I'd like to call leadership, the Chancellor, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, our Chairperson, Ms. Xoliswa Kakana, and Professor Letlokwa Mpedi on stage to present the gifts to Prof Tshilidzi Marwala and his lovely wife, Dr. Jabulile Manana. Thank you.
Let's speak at the end, yeah? To explain the gift for the Vice-Chancellor. No.
For you?
Oh, you need many hands. Let's put it.
So I put it.
You can speak English.
More shall be given, right?
Okay. So as easy those closed ones, you have to unveil.
Me.
Yeah.
Hold on. I have to explain it, and I'm going to replace it.
That's the one that you have to explain there.
But after
Should I keep it here?
after
Yes. May I? Yeah. May I? Thank you so much.
the big one in the middle. There's a bigger version of this that was there at the bottom. This is yours.
So USB with the video in the.
And also your gift, I wish to explain.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay.
With my program.
Okay. I will explain. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary and late Pele, the footballer, in one of his many documentaries, at the end, he said something that stayed in my head. He said, "There is only one Pele, and the factory is closed." So tonight, I would like to say there is only one Professor Tshilidzi Marwala, and the factory is closed. Let's give him a warm round of an applause, ladies and gentlemen. My task at this stage is to explain, this art and all the gifts. A wise young lady today at a function at UJ told me, "Don't cut corners, do things the right way, and be careful who's watching, you'll never know, because that can be career limiting." So I will not follow the path taken by my colleague, Professor Dr. Buguza, and say, I refer to the introductions of the Honorable Minister or all the colleagues that spoke after him. So former President Halima Motlanthe and Ms. Gugu Motlanthe, Chancellor Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, Director General and Secretary of Cabinet, Mrs. Pindile Baleni and Mr. Franz Baleni, Chairperson of Council. She's not incoming. She is the Chairperson of Council, Miss Toliswa Kakana. He called me incoming Vice-Chancellor. Depending on the mood, he say IVC. Then I thought, hell, I'm going to call him outgoing Vice-Chancellor, OVC. So OVC, Professor Tshilidzi Marwala, and Dr. Jabulile Manana, family and friends. I had to do this so that I can say my wife, Mrs. Besimpedi, former Chairperson of Council, Mr. Mike Teke, and Miss Sandy Teke, former Vice-Chancellor and Principal, Professor Aaron Rensbeck and Dr. Sizeka Rensbeck, Vice-Chancellors of other tertiary institutions. You know, you heard about the Vice-Chancellor of UNISA, Professor Puleng Lenkabula. You heard about Professor Tinyuko Maluleke, the Vice-Chancellor of Tshwane University of Technology. And you also heard earlier the outgoing Vice-Chancellor introduce and welcome Dr. Bernard Ntambeleni, Vice-Chancellor of Univen. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I know now I'm standing on your way. There's still another item, but almost there. I have to do this properly. My task here is to explain all the gifts that we have seen. And I'll start by indicating that the VC's portrait, the small one here, there's a bigger one that will be hung at the university. And the Vice-Chancellor took a walk with me and said, there's still space for yours, you know, if you live in good terms with Jay. So this is his, and there will be a bigger one. Both were done by Jaco van Skalwyk, the artist. And the big one I'll explain in more detail. Dr. Jabulile Manana received some jewelry. The jewelry set was designed by David Ditlako, a third-year student at the University of Johannesburg. There's a lot of talent at UJ, ladies and gentlemen. Now, about the main artwork that you see there, this was also done by a UJ student. We've got lots of talent in addition to our choir. And the title given to this artwork is, I Am Through You. Now, I have to acknowledge that this statement that I'm reading was prepared by Professor Kim Berman, professor at our Department of Visual Art at UJ. And this, you know, as I said, this artwork was done by a UJ student artist, Leonardo Sitwe. Mr. Leonardo, I hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. Right, Professor Tshilidzi Marwala is an accomplished scholar, as you have heard, thought leader, and artificial intelligence expert. His dynamic leadership at the University of Johannesburg over the past 14 years, ladies and gentlemen, from Dean of Engineering and the Built Environment to Deputy Vice-Chancellor and finally Vice-Chancellor, has shaped the institution for a future defined by interconnectedness and innovation. This painting and relief carving by UJ visual art student Leonardo Sitwe is a vivid celebration of Professor Marwala as a leader and researcher who values connectivity. The two mirror representations of Marwala signify, first, his charismatic, people-centered leadership, and second, his groundbreaking research and astute governance that has positioned UJ to be a leader in the fourth industrial revolution. Through Prof Marwala's leadership, the university has soared in global rankings, as you have heard earlier. The bright colors in the jacket honor Professor Marwala's Shivenda heritage. He was born in 1975 at Dutini village in the Chivase region of Limpopo. From Chibambe Primary School, where he started his schooling, to Cambridge University, where he completed his PhD in artificial intelligence and engineering. Professor Marwala has connected ideas, fields, technologies, and people. In the artwork, this interconnectedness finds expression through the electrical circuits and computer neural networks. Those who may not know, you'll see those, especially the head there with the colorful jacket. Marwala's research interests are truly multidisciplinary and include the theory and application of artificial intelligence to engineering, computer science, finance, social science, and medicine. Together, the two figures and the circuits reflect the philosophy of Ubuntu at Marwala's core. This is referenced in the artwork's title, I Am Through You. Central in the composition is a shelf of books bound in bright patterns. These elements are a nod to Professor Marwala's commitment to the pursuit of knowledge. He has personally written, as you've heard earlier, a staggering 24 books and nearly 500 peer-reviewed articles. Professor Marwala is also a fellow of numerous science and engineering academies, a patent holder for multiple inventions, and the recipient of dozens of awards, including the Order of Mapungubwe. Professor Marwala is deeply committed to leveraging technology and global interconnectedness toward the pursuit of sustainable development. In March, as you know, 2023, he will take this commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals to a truly global realm, where he will begin as the rector of the United Nations University in Tokyo, Japan. The United Nations University is a multinational university across 12 countries. The institution is a champion of collaborative research and education that works to connect the global academic community to the United Nations. It works to support efforts to resolve global changes in human development and welfare with evidence-based research to inform policymaking and generate solutions to improve the lives of people across the globe. Professor Marwala could not be better suited to the role. Showing a few of the many dimensions of Professor Marwala's cutting-edge contributions, this artwork is an apt symbol of gratitude for a remarkable leader in anticipation of his inauguration in a role of immense global importance. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Our next speaker is our UJ Council member. Over to Mr. Franz Baleni.
Good evening. All protocol observed. Okay. All protocol observed. Mkulwe, Mr. Teke, forced me to go to UJ archives, mining archives. I spent 4 hours. In the mining archives, in 1953, they introduced what is called Kefa beer. And after sampling it in various hostels, there was a peak of violence. So in 1954, government decided that there must be an investigation to establish the level of alcohol in this Kefa beer. So tonight, we're not going to dictate to you the form and shape of toasting. We are going to exercise freedom, use whatever glass you have, be it not the one of 53, any form of shape. Because of the large number, we'll use 3 in 1. We kindly ask you to stand up and upright. So we'll do one toast in 1, in 3. Firstly, I'm going to say all these 3 things and then say toast. So the first one, to UJ's continued success and stay in the Premier League. That's the first one. The second one is visionary leadership, past, present, and future. And finally, Professor Marwala, go there and shine. Raise a flag of South African ink higher and higher. Cheers.
Okay, I'd like to call the UJ Choir. Good. Thank you to the UJ Choir. I'd like to call on stage our incoming Vice-Chancellor, Professor Litlokwa Mbedi, to make closing remarks. Thank you.
I understand, you know, your clapping is not encouraging, but I understand I have to prove myself. Thank you. Now I can say all protocol observed. Earlier I said Professor Marwala was born in 1975 and I heard, of course he was not born in 1975, but I won't tell you when he was born. You know, there are people who used to change their age and made themselves younger when they came to the cities. Now they're paying the price because they don't qualify for old age grant. I'm not saying Professor Marwala qualifies for old age grant. Ladies and gentlemen, without any waste of time, my task is to do some farewell closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening has been a celebration of both Professor Tshilidzi Marwala and the University of Johannesburg. It is fitting that I have been tasked with closing this evening and, in a sense, this chapter. Over the last 2 years, in my role as Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic and in recent months as Vice-Chancellor Designate, Professor Marwala has been a constant source of support and inspiration. And I would like to also add my time as as Executive Dean of the Faculty of Law at UJ. He would call and say, Mpedi, are you at your office? And I say, yes, Vice-Chancellor. And he say, I'm on my way. He would never ask, what are you doing? Do you have time for me? And he would arrive and we would have rooibos in my office. And had lots of cups of rooibos. Obviously, I can take as many tears as I can as a former member of the Zion Christian Church. We really drank lots of rooibos. And sometimes he would call and say, Mpedi, are you at your office? And I say, yes, Vice-Chancellor. Then he say, I'm on my way. Say, let's go for a walk. Then I'd be wearing a 3-piece suit, church shoes, and a tie. And we'd do 10,000 steps. Obviously, I would keep up with him. He would come wearing running shoes. I would be walking with church shoes, but I would keep up with him as a former karateka. But after the walk, I would go to my office, take off my shoes, loosen my tie, take off the vest inside, and say, hell, he made me walk. But during these visits, when I say really he was a constant source of support, I've come to appreciate one thing. When we grew up I come from a village, we had people who, because they had a BA degree that took them 10 years to finish because it had 10 modules, and they thought they've made it. Those days at UNISA, the BA degree had 10 modules. And these guys used to be so arrogant when we were kids. They would walk around with the burabura, the gown, and say, we are wearing these black gowns because they say we are mourning for education. And this is so sad, ladies and gentlemen, because they never told us that they are red gowns for PhDs. And now I come to Professor Marwala. He's an educated man, no doubt about that. But he's so humble all the time. It's not like Monday he's humble, tomorrow he's arrogant, and so on. And I've come to appreciate and realize that the people who think have made it, they are the arrogant ones because they haven't achieved anything. And those who have really made it, they have nothing to prove to anyone. They rather pull others up. And let's clap for Prof Marwala. Unselfish leader that wants to improve other people. He sent me to Oxford. He sent me to Harvard. Who does this in this day and age? Because they think, when I leave, I want people to say when he left, things collapsed. He says, I'm empowering everyone, not only me. He sent other colleagues to all sorts of places, Harvard, you name it. And this is the leaders we need today, especially in the higher education sector. For me personally, I have to use this opportunity. I won't get this opportunity again. Please bear with me. I've benefited a lot from him. And one thing that I appreciate is that he sees the light even when you think everything is dark. There is a blues musician who passed away, B.B. King, an American blues musician. He's got a song called Nightlife. I don't know if you know it. Google it, play it on YouTube. He's got a line where he says, nightlife is not easy life, people, but it's my life. I want to turn that around and say academic life, especially academic leadership and management, is not easy life, people, but it's my life. It's his life. It's the life we chose. I'm saying this because in academia you get a lot of wise people, and it's how it should be. One of my mentors used to say to me, a retired professor, that he had this stupid joke in all places in Germany where this vice-chancellor said, the principal of a university, or president as they call them in Germany, said, it seems God wanted to make life difficult for academic administrators. He brought academics and he brought other academics. so that they can really engage. But it's how it should be. But for me, with Prof Marwala, he would find me and say, my brother, you look dejected. And I say, yeah, I don't understand why these people, are treating me like this. Of course, other academics, I won't say from which university, not UJ, of course. And then he would say something, I would think he would say, yeah, they also did this to me. He says, he's got this, I don't know how to characterize this laugh, but if you know Prof Marwala, you know that laugh. Naughty laugh kind. My brother, he would say, I don't blame them. I said, what kind of a brother are you? Are you with these people? He says, no. See it this way. If you didn't have anything for these people to be jealous about, they wouldn't be paying attention. Look, you have this, you are a solid scholar, you worked in Germany at the famous Max Planck Institute, and later start, standing up and feeling the weight of my importance. It's not about that, but few people can really uplift you like Professor Marwala. He's got a way of chastising you, but with that smile, and he won't chastise you immediately. I like quoting rappers. Not that I glamorize what they do and say, but sometimes they would say certain things that make sense, and I thought I would quote them selectively. And one day, I quoted this rapper, and a few days later he said, what is the name of that philosopher? Then I said, what philosopher? He said, the musician. He said, my brother, be careful when you quote these people because they are divisive. I tried to explain. He said, no, but you have to understand, people see them differently. And guess what? At last council's dinner, the chairperson of council was quoting, the incoming chairperson then was quoting Drake. He was quoting Jay-Z, and I'm like, anyway, life goes on. So, ladies and gentlemen, another thing, I often wondered if Professor Marwala does get stressed. He would laugh at things. He would come and say, look at what these people say about me. And he would laugh and walk away. And, but I saw him stressed twice. Once, and I'm sorry to bring back this pain, was when you lost your family dog. And that is understandable. The second time was when you thought your son missed a test. And it turned out that he didn't miss it. He would say, Mbedi, being a parent is hard. One thing I'll tell you, VC, outgoing VC, is that I'm sad and happy at the same time. I'm sad that, those days, when you'd come to my office almost 3 times a day and we'll have more tea and rusks, which was also another source of debate in my office because my PA would say, why don't you buy the VC a bag of rusks? You'll see, he won't come to your office and disturb you while you're working. I said, no, we don't give him rusks because he won't come and visit me. I enjoy talking to him. Then we bought him rusks. He still came for my rusks and tea. But what I enjoyed about this is our discussions. As you know, Prof Marwala, he can talk about anything and everything. Hammanskraal, where I come from, he tells me stories about Hammanskraal that I didn't know really happened. But there was always, after our discussion, there would be something productive. We've written a few op-eds. One is coming on Sunday. 2 more are in the works. After talking about something, we'll talk about social responsibility. And say, my brother, we must write an op-ed about this. Then I'll delay because I'm DVC designate, I'm Deputy Vice-Chancellor, academic, I'm everything, and I'm not complaining. He will remind me in his nice way. He would say, my brother, how is it going? Nyahamba. And then he would say to me, don't forget our op-ed. And we'll get it done. He will be the first to deliver despite all his challenges. At the same time, I'm happy, VC, that you are going. Not that I don't like you. If you are not going, I wouldn't be the incoming Vice-Chancellor. So I have to see it from the brighter side. But there is one thing that he told me, and that's something that I hope to do. He said, look, you have to leave the stage while it's still hot, not when people are pushing you. He always said, I'm not going to do 2 terms. I want to finish my first term. After it has been renewed, then I'm out. And then this is what he did. So ladies and gentlemen, often change is met with fear, trepidation, and anxiety. I've been told stories, there are big shoes to fill. As I told you, there's only one Professor Marwala. If I try to be him, I'm going to fail dismally. The world, cannot afford that. UJ cannot afford that. And there is only one me. So today I said during an interview, and people maybe thought I was arrogant, but he's cool with it. I said, I bring my own shoes. We are going to build on the great work that has been done. I'm bringing my own shoes. My own shoes. Because he said the same thing when Prof Rensbeck was leaving. People said, big shoes. He said, I don't like his shoes. Do you remember? And you said you like Crockett and Jones or something like that. And no offense was intended with that. This year, ladies and gentlemen, is an important one in the history of UJ. We are undergoing seismic shifts that are unfolding at a rapid rate, but we are also rising at an astounding pace. As I ready myself to step up to the mantle and lead from the helm of the university, I'm ever mindful of the astonishing institution I'm inheriting. In our country's democratic history, UJ is still the new kid on the block, although we hold the weight of various historically important institutions. You see, people think I'm arrogant when I say it, and I'm going to say it today, and I don't want to alienate vice-chancellors before I even meet some of the colleagues. You see, we don't have a history to say we've been doing this for so many decades or centuries. We are making our own history. We are making the rules as we go along. And that way, we are not afraid to challenge all these things that come our way. And we are a high-performance university. Whoever plans to come to the University of Johannesburg know that. We are a high-performance university, and we are not going to change. Whoever tries to pull us back will be pushed to the side. Not violently, of course. We'll keep on moving, Professor Marwala. You'll watch from Tokyo. Reteke, as I fondly call you, you'll watch from your office. We'll still invite you. Prof Rensbeck, we are going to build on your hard work, together with the new Chancellor, together with the new Chairperson of Council, I promise you. Ladies and gentlemen, ours is a short but rich history and represents a tapestry of institutions that have seamlessly come together. Our rise in recent years, however, has been a feat in itself, and to borrow the phrase bandied around during the pandemic, unprecedented. In our relatively short history, UJ has emerged as a widely regarded model for other universities in leading the 4IR conversation in South Africa and on the continent. Our institution has emerged as a real contender in every sphere because of Professor Tshilidzi Marwala's leadership. My assurance to you all is that this is simply a legacy we'll continue to build on. I'm bringing my shoes, but we're going to build on this legacy. That's one thing that I can promise you. I have used the last few months to absorb his wisdom, seek his counsel, and tease out my plans for the future. This has been perhaps the most valuable exercise in preparation for my new role. To quote Charles Darwin, a firm favorite of Prof Marwala's, open quote, "In the long history of humankind and animal kind too, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed." This evening, we have reflected on Prof Marwala's achievements in the last 5 years. This has confirmed that the UJ that has emerged, characterized by the fourth industrial revolution and emphasis on sustainability and a force to be reckoned with, is testament to his vision, perseverance, and persistence. As he said earlier this evening, he had a bold vision. It has been remarkable to see this vision unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, Prof Marwala introduced me to sake. I didn't know that you can choose whether to drink this cold or hot. Imagine, like iced tea, the Japanese drink. Now he's leaving. He knows all the sake spot. I don't know. I hope you will leave a list of all these places where I can go when I miss you. As you move on to the next chapter, on a new continent, we will continue to draw inspiration from you and build on your vision. Our promise to lean into UJ's tagline is that we will continue to reimagine the future at every tier. We wish you all of the best and sincerely thank you for your role in transforming UJ. Bachimble Zwabudi, go well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.